Hey guys, this is Eric Weingarten with Weingarten Racing. Today's video is about whether adding a turtle, that's this, to the bottom of an intake manifold, does it make more power? Does it change its torque? Anything? Does it do anything? Is it just pointless? Did you waste your time? Today I'm going to reveal that. For those that don't know, I had a 406 small block Chevy built as a dyno mule, which means I just test different ideas. For those that are new to the channel, I've tested 26 different intakes total. And it's now been 3 dyno sessions and I've tried different things, this being one, because some of you are like right now looking at this like, what are those? Well, that was in a previous video. You can go back and watch, and I'll briefly mention that in a minute. But I've tested a bunch of things, and this happens to be one. If you're watching this video, you're gonna find sometimes I can't see what the numbers are. What are the numbers? I wish I could see. I hate seeing stuff on YouTube. All the numbers that I give you and all the graphs are in these 2 books. And you can go to my website, which is wengines.com, and you can purchase these books. So this is version 1. This is all the information about the engine, as well as any of the dyno tests from session 1. This book is from session 2. This has only the information that involves about session 2. So more of the engine information is definitely in book 1. This is in book 2. Now, session 3 has already been completed. I don't have a book for that yet because, well, I haven't even talked about it enough, and I got to get it all organized. So let's get started. So here's the basics of it. By the way, again, these are on my website, wengines.com. There's a link for my online store. Click on the online store. Since I know I got some old people in here, I'm one of them. I get it. Technology kind of throws me. Even though it says pay with PayPal, you put in a credit card. PayPal is just the system that uses it. You could still use a credit card even if you don't have a PayPal account. Anyway, now let's get to it. I'm moving these out of the way, but I'll show you what the numbers are in a minute. So what this intake is, by the way, is a Hurricane. This is version 3. This is version 2. I'm only using this to kind of show you what's been done. So they're similar, not the same. Initially, this intake was, this one right here, version 3, was like this one. You see a flat floor, and that's how it was. So what I did is I added epoxy to the floor. This is something called a turtle. And the reason for is, I don't know who named it, but Brodix had several of them where they actually had aluminum ones that they had cast, and you could actually put them inside of a manifold. I'm not sure that they sell those anymore. And what you do is if you had a manifold like this, you put it in, you just do a couple welds and it's in place, and essentially it makes that. And they claimed it made more torque and horsepower. And even Brodix manifolds, the big block one, the part number is BM 2017, has a cast-in turtle. And I had done some testing before, but nothing back-to-back to go no turtle versus turtle. So on this, it's going to be interesting to see what it actually did, because I had an idea, but I want to know for sure, right? So you could do this at home. I promise you, of all the stuff I do, this one's probably one of the more easier ones for a person at home to do. What I did is I went to O'Reilly's. You can go to AutoZone as well. Both of them are great places. Or it's actually cheaper at Walmart. Yes, I said that. They have JB Weld, the Quick Stick, and it's a 2-part deal. And what you do is you knead it together, and then you put it on here. And I'm going to give you some tips when you do it. Make sure you rough up the bottom surface. So if I was putting it on this, do not do it like this. The first thing you need to do is kind of cartridge roll or sand or something to give it some more roughness. Then you're going to clean it really well, and then you do your kneading your epoxy, and you smash it in. And then have a glass of water next to you ready. Because what you'll do is you'll dip your finger or whatever you want to use to mold it into the water, and you're smeared on there, and you could form it much easier. And it's pretty much like working with clay. But realize, as soon as you knead, it's going to be setting up in about 5 minutes. It'll be too hard for you to do anything with after that point, to change it easily anyway. After it's fully set up, what you can see I've done here is, the reason why it's light gray here is I used some cartridge roll to further blend it. And that's how I made it. So you can do this at home. And in case you're wondering, because it looks like a lot, and it is a lot, and the light sucks because it fell out, but there we go. I'll just do this. That's a better view, hopefully, for you. This is a lot. This was about 3 sticks, so quite a bit of epoxy got added. And you might say, why did you add so much? Because I wanted to see, I didn't want to do a little. I want to go full swing. If it makes a change, I want it to be a big change. If it loses, I want it to be a big loss. If it gains, it wants to be a big gain. I'm swinging for the moon. That's what these tests are. I can't just keep doing dyno tests one little small thing at a time. I don't have the budget for that, so big swings. So that was what was done. This is called a turtle. That's what they call these. This was easy. Like I said, you could do this. The real question is, well, what did it do for power? So this manifold, just so you know, I want you to understand this. On the dyno mule, on session 1, it was completely stock except for had these in there. And here's what the reason for these are, in case you're wondering, what the hell did you do? I had a wild thought that I would connect tubes from each one of these ports, kind of a cross bank, to see if maybe these tubes would force more air into the other cylinders. That was in a previous video, and it's actually, those results are in the very first book, which is right here. Those results are in that book. It didn't do anything. But I plugged them off so I can keep continuing to keep using the manifold, and that's why they're like that. So it had nothing to do with this test. But anyway, so the point being is the dyno test is exactly like this, and this was with the results initially. There we go. It didn't do bad. Overall, I think this finished 3rd. This was 3rd place of all the intakes tested so far. It was 3rd for peak power and 7th for peak torque. So it made 562. And in case you're wondering what the combination is, I forgot to mention, it's in the book too, but 406 small block Chevy, 11.2 compression ratio, pump gas, AFR 195 enforcer heads, completely stock, an Urson solid roller cam, 260, 270, 685 lift, 108 lobe separation, 1000 CFM race demon carburetor. It was redone by Mark Whitener, and then I had an AFR 4-hole taper spacer on each one of them at 1 inch. Even though I might not say it in the notes, they all had the exact same spacer, everything. So there's your initial. Now let's get to session 2. And don't worry, there's overlays I'll show you in a minute. This is where it did now. So if you remember it was 562 before, now it's 555. So it lost. So adding that a turtle lost power. And right away, I know somebody like, well, that was a waste. This is just peaks. What you need to see is the overlay, and that's this. As I dump it twice. Here we go. There. The black line is that. So the turtle added is the black line. The red line stock. This wasn't shown in those raw data numbers. So if you look at peaks, here's peaks. You can see right here, the non-turtle added, look how much power. But here's huge. Adding the turtle really pumped up torque pretty much from the start. And we started about 4,500 all the way till it looks like 51, 52, about 5,300 RPM. And from that point on, not having the turtle made more power. So that was an interesting test because it really did help out low lift power. I mean, not low lift, but low RPM power. And I know some of you are like, why didn't you pull it down lower? I'm going to do a whole video on why we don't pull down lower an RPM to start a test, because it's kind of pointless, especially since this is kind of more of a bracket race engine. But anyway, yeah, it makes more torque at the lower RPM, but it loses power at the upper RPM. And there's kind of some theories and thoughts for this, and I want to share some of mine with you. So I usually don't add theories and stuff to it. I let you make your own decisions, which you can. So remember, I'm not God. Take this as all a grain of salt. But one of the thoughts I had was when we did this, is when you fill in this and you add the turtle, you're essentially decreasing plenum volume, right? Obviously, I'm adding more here, so the floor fills up. You've got less plenum volume. But I think that had little to do anything with it, because in session 3, I'm going to tell you what we did. So all the tests before only had a 1-inch 4-hole taper spacer. So on session 3, which is not in these books because I haven't made the session book yet, I added another 1-inch spacer. So a total of 2-inch spacers. So you had a 1-inch open and then the 1-inch tapered 4-hole. You know what it did for power? Absolutely nothing. It didn't gain 1 horsepower. It didn't lose 1 horsepower. It was exactly the same. So adding the turtle to the bottom, yes, it decreased plenum volume, but adding the spacer should have made up for that loss of volume. It had no effect. So the turtle itself probably had little to do with that area as far as the plenum volume. But what it did, and this is probably the reason for it had more dramatic effect, was if you look how I did it, it went into the opening right here. And you can tell they all go into the opening. And what it did was it shrunk down the area at the opening of the port on the intake manifold. So it actually lost quite a bit of volume. And I have the notes inside, but I didn't. It's also in the book. So if you get the book, the actual areas are in there before stock and opened up. So those notes are actually in the book. But I think now it's like 3.69, and before it was in the 4s, especially on the outer runner. So just for the record, this manifold had much more opening area on the outside runners than it did in the inside stock anyway. Obviously you could see because it comes up taller than it does on the inside. When I added the turtle, it shrunk it up quite a bit. Like it lost at least a half an inch of area. That probably caused this more than the loss of plenum volume. So by shrinking that opening area, it actually built more torque, but then it didn't have enough area at the higher RPM to make the power. That's my theory and assumption at this point. So, but that just gives you some stuff to, some interesting things to think about when it comes to turtles. Now here's a disadvantage. So if you're like, man, turtle sounds like a win to me because I'm not spinning above, looks like it crossed over about 59-ish, because that's 6,000. This is 59, about 5,900 from that point on, it was better. So maybe you're thinking, well, I don't turn 6,000 RPM, I should put a turtle in. It's not a bad idea if you've got enough plenum volume. The other thing is, this manifold itself, if you look at it just the way they are, they're quite large as far as the plenum depth anyway. So let's say I had done it on one that had smaller plenum depth, I don't know that the results would be the same. So don't take this as universal that, hey, if I just add a turtle, this thing's just gonna pick up. It has more factors involved, such as the plenum itself. Other things to think about as well as if you're doing this epoxy's cool and all, and I've had very good luck, but they can come out. So just another thought for you. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching. Remember, I'm no Superman. You guys take care.